Hi guys, welcome to another video. Like I said last time, in this video we're going to be doing and implementing some of the user detail and user detail services. We're going to be looking at the repositories and also services. Okay, in the next video I'm going to go deeper into the JWT authentication filter, but right now we're going to prepare the user detail service and the user detail that we're going to be using when the user wants to authenticate. Okay, so let's begin with a few configurations that I didn't do correctly last time. So to begin with, I'm going to go to my POM, because if you remember last time when I opened the JWT properties, there was something about IntelliJ here, but this is only for IntelliJ users, I think. So in order to make this not red, you will have to add one dependency, which is the configuration dependency, and you should add it in your pom.xml. And when you add it and you go back, and there you see there's not red anymore, it's only saying to update, but that's an issue that IntelliJ, I've looked around on Google, but nobody seems to have a solution for this error, for this warning, let's say like that. So that's that. The next thing that we're going to be doing is adding this dependency here, right here, for apache.comments. That library we're going to be using to check for a string when it's null, empty, or with only white spaces. Okay, and there's a couple of more util classes there, but the ones that we're going to be using are to check if a string is null, empty, or only white space. Okay, so that's it for the demo for the pom.xml. Next thing we're going to be doing is, since we already created the database, we're going to change this to update. So only if something updates, then it's going to be updated in the database, not dropping the whole database and then creating it every time that we launch the application. And one thing you should also remember is that these configurations are specific for MySQL database. So if you have another database, you should figure out the settings for that database. So this one I think is specific to MySQL, and also this one. The other ones I think is general, but I'm not so sure, so figure it out. Okay, so one thing I want you to remember also, that this is a cookie-based implementation of the JWT authentication token. It's not the authorization header, bearer token, nothing like that. It's the cookie-based, and with the cookie-based, it's really good for protection against cross-site scripting, because when you set a cookie, you're the only thing that can access the cookie is the browser and not any JavaScript. So by doing that, you're totally safe from cross-site scripting. The only thing is that you will have to implement the CSRF protection, but that is done automatically in Spring. That we will see that later on. Okay, so the next thing you're going to do is, last time I forgot to add these no args and all args constructor. Those are only for Lombok users. This will prevent an issue later on when we're going to access entities or database data. Okay, so you should edit here, and also in the role table, so the same thing, edit here, because you know, and the Spring Data GPA needs an empty constructor, and the builder needs a constructor that has all the arguments. Okay, so that was that. The next thing we're going to be doing is insertion of data. So I have this on start class here. You see that is new, and there are also other classes here that are new, but we're going to go through all of them. I implemented them out of this video so we can proceed with the JWT authentication and not by making these classes. Okay, so we're going to go through them, but really fast. Okay, so the first one, the onStart server class, is for when all applications are, all the injections and AutoWire, all the Spring Beans are loaded, then we want to insert the data. So the class should implement the application listener, and that will execute as soon as all beans are loaded. Okay, so let's go to the dispenser service where I make a method for inserting data. This is a method you should use at transactional here, and this method is going to populate some data. So the first one is the user. We have three users. The first one is user, the second one is admin, and the third one is public. And the first user is going to have all the roles, so admin and public. Admin only admin, public only public roles. So here you can see person are roles, they have all roles, and the admin has only admin, and the public only public. And then you save all the persons like you would normally save using the repository. Okay, so that's that. So when we run this application, now we're going to be seeing the database loaded. So right now you can see there's no data, and when we run this application, we're going to be seeing that the data is going to be inserted. So let's run it. Okay, it's running, and here you can see that it's inserting into person, role, etc, etc. So when you refresh now the database, you see three persons here, one person with both roles, the other person has only one roles, and you see the roles there. Okay, so that's for inserting the data. So right now we have the data. So on all for the execution, we're going to be commenting this out. You can comment the whole class, but I'm only going to be comment the method that inserts the data, because we don't need it anymore. We already have the data, right? Okay, so we can stop this, and then we can go back and proceed what we're going to be doing today. So first of all, I'm going to show you the personal repository that I made that was not in the last video. So we have a personal repository interface which extends the GPA repository. Remember, the first the type, so the person, and then the ID, the type of the ID, which in this case is a long. If you go here in the person class, you can see ID is a long. Okay, and then this method I'm going to come later on when we are going to be implementing the UserDetailsService. And also the other thing we're going to be seeing is the person service that I already showed you with inserting data, but there's also this find person by username, which uses the repository method that I just showed you. This is important to do. Read only is true, so we're not going to be updating any data, so it's best practice to put read only true. Remember to put add service here, so Spring can recognize it as a bean. Okay, The next thing I'm going to show you is the exception classes really fast. So this exception is going to be used later on when the user is trying to authenticate. So generate a new token, but it's already sending a token. Okay, so that means he's already authenticated, he's already logged in. And this is for the when there's something wrong with the token. Okay, here there's also classes that I made to make it easier, because when we're going to be giving an error, we're going to be giving a JSON response back. So this class is just to hold all the data that's going to be returned as a JSON object. You have the status, you have the message, and you have the error code for the user. Actually, the timestamp is not important right now, but maybe later on you can use it to log errors, at what time they occurred, etc, etc. Okay, so I think we're ready to begin implementing the user detail right now. So let's begin implementing the custom user detail. For that, we're going to be going into the security folder. We're going to add a new class, and we're going to name it the custom user detail. This custom user detail is going to be extending the user class from Spring Framework Security User Details. This class has to have a constructor that matching the super. So in this case, we're going to be going with this one. But no, let's implement the other one. So the one that's only this one. Okay, and later on we will change this also. Okay, so first thing you have to do is, if you have Lombok adds data, and then because you add the data, you have to have equals code exclude. No, sorry. It's supposed to be called super false. Okay, so here this custom user detail is going to be used, and is going to be passed down when you're going to be using authentication filter. So this custom user detail is extending the Spring user detail class, the Spring user class, and this class is used when the authentication is successful. Okay, so all the details that you need for the user and that you need to put in the JWT token, you should put it here. So the first one is going to be rows, because we're going to be saving the rows in the JWT token. Make sure you import the row from demo.model and not the enumeration type. So that's the first one, and here we're going to make sure that this is passed down. So let's change this to list of rows. And when we're going to be user, because the superclass needs a lot of attributes, and the first one is the username, and then it proceeds with the password, and then as you can see is going to be the enabled value. So for this they are all true, because we're not going to be doing this now. So you can put here all true, and then the last one is the authorities. For the authorities, you're going to get the roles of the user, you're going to stream it, and then map it, and then in the map you're going to be creating the authorities with the simple granted authority class constructor. So role, and you use the name, and then you will have to collect it because it's supposed to be a set. Oh, no, it's supposed to be a list actually. So let's collect, and let's make it a list. Okay, so that's for the superclass. And then there's one other method that we're going to be using later on, and let's create it right now. This is to get all the rows that it's going to be inserted in the JWT token. So let's just stream the rows again, and then just getting the name. And when we get the name, we are going to be casting it to an array. Okay, and a new array, you guess it like this, and that's it. So that's the custom user detail. Right now we're already done with this. This custom user detail we're going to be using in the custom user details service. The custom user details service is the one that's going to be used to get the user by the username and then pass it down the chain for screen security to authenticate. Okay, but right now let's go ahead and create it. So the user detail class, which is custom user detail service. This class is going to be implementing the user detail service class, and since an interface you have to implement all the methods, which is only one. And then this one we already know that is going to be taking the username that the user sends and then check with the database is available. Then if it's available, we will extract all the informations and pass it down the security chain, the Spring security chain. So remember here to put read only, because we're not going to be editing any data. We're only going to be reading data and passing data down the chain. Make sure you auto-wired the Power Person service, which we're going to be used to access the database. And the first thing we have to do is check to see if the person is available. So the method that I showed to you a few minutes ago, defined by username method, that returns an optional in Java, which is very handy. So here we're going to pass a username, and the username is S. We can change this also. We can specify and make it more clear that this is the username. And then, since it is an optional, if it's not available, then we're going to be throwing a new username not found exception. You don't have to put anything here because Spring will not use that message anyway. It will ignore it and will throw a bad credentials exception when it encounters a username not found exception. Okay, so this, I made a mistake. It should be throw or else throw, and then this method needs a user details type object, and we already made one. This is the custom user detail that extends the user. So we're going to be creating a new custom user detail object, and here we're going to be passing the person that gets username that we got from the database, and also the password that is encoded. And the last one is the rows. And with the rows we need to pass an array list, so we need to create, because the person that get rows is a set, so and we don't use a set, so we need to create a new array list and pass the set, and it will automatically create a new array list, a new list with rows. So that's it for the custom user details. So this custom user detail is going to be used later on in the authentication filter to authenticate and get the username. And this username and all the details is going to be passed to the Spring Security, and the Spring Security is going to be checking the username and the password. No, not the username. It's going to be checking the password if it matches with the password that you entered and you submitted in a form or whatever in the post request. Okay, so I think that's it for this video. I hope you understood. If you don't understood, ask in the comments, and any suggestions is welcome. Okay, in the next video we're going to be implementing the JWT authentication filter, which is going to be using the custom user details, and the custom user details it's already using the custom user detail. Remember, anything that you need to put in the JWT token, it's good practice to pass it here. Okay, if you need to pass the whole object, you can also pass the whole object here like this. If you have a lot of details of that object that you want to put in the JWT token, and then you can just pass in the constructor and assign it like a normal class initialization. Okay, and then this person you will then later get in the JWT authentication filter when the user logged in successfully, but we'll see that later on. And this is best practice, because this way you avoid that in the JWT authentication filter you again query the database. Okay, so that's it. I will see you in the next video. I hope you understood. Thank you for listening. Bye bye.